Imagine waking up one morning with the unsettling feeling that nothing dramatic has changed, yet everything is somehow different. The same ceiling stares back at you, the same room breathes quietly around you, the same life waits outside the door. And still, something feels heavier, as if an invisible hand has been pressing down on your chest for years, slowly, patiently, without ever announcing itself. You didn't choose this moment. It arrived on its own. You tell yourself you're tired. You blame the stress, the world, the noise, the endless obligations. But beneath all of that hums a deeper question you've avoided asking. How did I get here? Not just physically, but psychologically, existentially, internally. Because when you look closely, this life doesn't feel accidental. It feels patterned. You begin to sense a strange contradiction. You've made countless decisions, some big, some microscopic, but none of them ever felt like they were shaping something permanent. And yet here you are, living inside a reality that feels oddly familiar, as if it has been rehearsed over and over in your mind long before it ever showed up in the world. What if the most powerful force shaping your destiny was never your circumstances, your intelligence, or your luck, but the thoughts you repeatedly returned to when no one was watching? Not the dramatic thoughts, not the ones you post, defend, or announce, but the quiet ones, the automatic ones, the thoughts that slip through your mind when you wake up, when you fail, when you compare yourself to others, when you feel slightly behind, slightly inadequate, slightly afraid. You rarely notice them because they don't shout, they whisper. And whispers are dangerous. They bypass resistance. They don't trigger alarms. They feel like you. Consider this. If your life today is the result of yesterday's actions, and your actions were born from your beliefs, and your beliefs were shaped by your thoughts, then at what point did you surrender authorship of your own future? When did you stop questioning the inner narrative and start obeying it? You probably didn't decide to become more cautious, more doubtful, more restrained. It happened gradually. One hesitation here, one rationalization there, 1,000 tiny inner negotiations that all felt reasonable in isolation, but stacked together they formed a direction, and direction, given enough time, becomes destiny. That's the paradox no one warns you about. Your life doesn't change in moments, it changes in moods, in assumptions, in the silent conclusions you draw about who you are and what's possible for you. You think you're reacting to reality, but what if reality has been reacting to you all along? Think about how often you say, "That's just how I am," without realizing how final that statement is. How often you mistake familiarity for truth. How often you confuse your current limitations with permanent laws of existence. And here's the unsettling part. Your mind doesn't argue with repetition, it obeys it. Every thought you think is a vote, not for what you want, but for what you're willing to become. Over time, those votes accumulate. They shape what you notice, what you avoid, what you attempt, and what you silently rule out before you even begin. You don't need negative thoughts to ruin a life. You only need unexamined ones. What if your destiny isn't some distant event waiting to happen, but a slow crystallization already underway? What if the future isn't approaching you from ahead, but quietly forming beneath your feet? This raises a disturbing question. If your thoughts are shaping your life, why do they feel so out of your control? You never sat down and chose most of them. They were inherited, absorbed, conditioned. They came from parents, teachers, culture, trauma, success, failure. And once they settled, they began speaking in your voice. So how do you fight an enemy that sounds like you? That's the tension you feel but can't quite name. The sense that you're living inside a script you didn't write, repeating patterns you don't fully understand, moving toward outcomes you never consciously chose. And yet, somewhere inside you, there's a growing discomfort, a pressure, a refusal to keep pretending this is random. Because deep down, you suspect the truth is far more uncomfortable, that your destiny isn't being stolen from you, it's being constructed by you moment by moment, thought by thought. If that's true, then the question isn't whether your thoughts shape your destiny. The question is, whose thoughts are you thinking and where are they leading you? That question doesn't demand an answer yet, but it refuses to leave. The problem begins long before you notice it, long before anxiety, dissatisfaction, or quiet despair make themselves known. It begins in the unnoticed space between a stimulus and your response, the place where interpretation quietly replaces reality. You don't experience the world as it is, you experience it as your mind expects it to be. This is not a poetic exaggeration, it is a psychological fact. Your brain is not a neutral observer, it's a prediction machine. Every moment, it scans for patterns, compares the present to the past, and fills in the gaps with assumptions that feel like truth. Over time, these assumptions harden. They become beliefs, and beliefs quietly become boundaries. This is where the hidden problem takes root. Most of your thoughts are not conscious choices, they are conditioned reflexes. From a psychological perspective, your mind is designed for efficiency, not truth. It conserves energy by reusing familiar interpretations. If a certain thought once helped you avoid pain, don't speak up, don't hope too much, don't trust, your mind keeps replaying it, even when the danger is gone. The thought becomes a survival artifact, mistaken for wisdom. This is why insight alone rarely changes anything. You can know something intellectually and still live as if the opposite were true, because the thoughts shaping your destiny do not live in logic. They live in emotion, memory, and repetition. This is where Carl Jung becomes unavoidable. Jung warned that the unconscious does not disappear when ignored, it directs you. What you refuse to examine does not remain passive, it becomes fate. In other words, the thoughts you are least aware of often have the most power. And what are these hidden thoughts usually about? Identity. Who you believe you are, what you believe you deserve, what you believe is possible for someone like you. Once these beliefs settle in, your mind begins filtering reality to confirm them. Success that contradicts your self-image is dismissed as luck. Failure that confirms it becomes proof. Slowly, imperceptibly, your thoughts begin constructing a world that feels consistent, but smaller. Philosophy has circled this truth for centuries. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that human suffering does not come primarily from events, but from interpretation and desire. You don't suffer because something happens, you suffer because your mind insists it shouldn't or that it means something about you. Desire creates a lens, and that lens distorts everything it touches. Then comes Friedrich Nietzsche, who took the idea further and made it dangerous. Nietzsche understood that thoughts are not passive reflections, they're expressions of power. The stories you tell yourself about reality are not innocent, they either strengthen or weaken your will to act. When a thought repeats long enough, it stops feeling like a thought, it becomes reality itself. This is why modern life is such a fertile ground for psychological stagnation. You are constantly fed narratives about success, happiness, purpose, but most of them are external scripts, designed to be absorbed, not questioned. Your thoughts no longer emerge from inner reflection, they are implanted through repetition. Aldous Huxley warned of a future where control would come not through force, but through pleasure and distraction, a world where people would willingly surrender depth for comfort. In such a world, thought itself becomes shallow, not because people are incapable, but because they are constantly redirected. The result is a mind that never sits still long enough to notice its own patterns. Existential philosophy exposes the final layer of the problem. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that human beings are condemned to be free, not empowered, condemned, because freedom means responsibility, and responsibility means accepting that your inner life has consequences. Most people avoid this realization by living in what Sartre called bad faith, pretending they are defined by roles, labels, circumstances, anything that relieves them of responsibility for becoming. But your thoughts don't accept this lie. They continue shaping you regardless. Even meaning itself does not escape this mechanism.
Viktor Frankl observed that between stimulus and response lies a space, and in that space lies your power to choose meaning. But if you never enter that space consciously, meaning is assigned to you by habit, fear, and conditioning. This is the hidden problem in its full form. Your destiny is being shaped by thoughts you did not consciously choose, reinforced by a culture that benefits from your unconscious participation, and protected by a mind that mistakes familiarity for truth. You are not trapped by fate. You are trapped by default thinking. And the longer this goes unnoticed, the deeper the consequences run, because thoughts don't stay in the mind. They seep into posture, tone, risk tolerance, ambition, relationships. They decide what feels possible before you ever act. Still, the most unsettling part remains hidden, because once thoughts shape perception, perception shapes